Alright, in this video, what we'll be doing is preparing an operating budget. The difference between this video and another video I have about preparing an operating budget is the fact that we're now going to look at a merchandising company. So if we have production is handled a little bit differently in developing an operating budget than a merchandising firm. And a merchandising firm would be somebody who is buying product and selling it as is with just a markup on it. So here's our scenario. We have some budgeted sales for quarter 1, 2, and 3, and we have information for quarter 4, but basically we're putting together information for the first 3 quarters of this year. And each unit sells for $25, and we purchase these units for $10 a piece. At the end of each quarter, the company will need enough on hand to handle 30% of the next quarter sales demand. And our selling and admin budget is $100,000 per quarter at a fixed rate and 15% of total sales revenue. That is the variable part of the budget. Okay, so the first thing that we do is compute the sales revenue per quarter. And this is the sales units times the sales price. So for quarter 1, we have budgeted unit sales of 50,000 times a selling price of $25. And we get a sales revenue of $1,250,000. And then for quarter 2 and quarter 3, you do the exact same calculations. So in part 2, we need to do a cost of merchandise. And this is where we start looking at the units that we need as far as purchasing them and pricing that out by the cost that it takes to purchase those units. So, for example, in quarter 1, we have units of 50,000. We need an ending inventory that will represent 30% of the next quarter sales. So 30% of 80,000 units in quarter 2 is 24,000. And our beginning inventory would be 30% of the current month's units. So 30% times 50,000 in quarter 1 gives us the 15,000 beginning inventory. So our budgeted purchases would be the 50,000 units plus our ending inventory minus our beginning inventory, and that gives us 59,000 units that we would need to purchase at a cost of $10 per unit. So our total cost of merchandise is $590,000. And then you go through the exact same calculations for quarter 2 and quarter 3. Next, our cost of goods sold budget will be the following. This is actually using the sales units that we're budgeting. So the units of 50,000 in quarter 1 for sales, we would multiply that times $10, the cost of purchasing those units. So our budgeted COGS is $500,000. And you do the same thing for quarter 2 and quarter 3. The fourth item we'll be calculating is the selling and admin expense budget. So our sales revenue is $1,250,000 for quarter 1. We calculated that in part 1 of this exercise. The variable selling and admin budget is 15% of that total sales revenue. So 15% times $1,250,000 gives you $187,500. That would be the variable portion of our selling and admin budget. Then we also have fixed admin of $100,000. So the total selling and admin budget for quarter 1 is the $187,500 plus the $100,000 fixed portion, which gives us $287,500. And then you go through the same calculations for quarter 2 and quarter 3. And then finally, we calculate a budgeted income statement. And this takes the sales revenue that we have calculated in part 1. It takes the COGS that we calculated in part 3. And we take the sales revenue minus the COGS gives us a gross margin. So $1,250,000 minus $500,000 gives us a gross margin of $750,000. Then we subtract from that the selling and admin budget that we calculated in part 4 of $287,500, and that gives us a net operating income of $462,500. And then you can do the same calculations for quarter 2 and quarter 3. Hopefully, if you look at this particular video and compare it to the preparing an operating budget for a production organization, and I have down below in the description a link to that video, you can see the difference between doing this exercise, this same exercise, one for a manufacturing operation and one for a retail resale type of scenario. So I hope that helps to highlight the differences between the two. If you have any questions, please leave them below. I'll be happy to help you, and I look forward to seeing you on another video. Thank you.